The Commander Rules Committee has decided to drop the ban hammer, and as a result, Hullbreacher is no longer going to be Commander legal, and I can't say that this really surprises me.
Magic.
I am a wizard!
History.
I'm an old wizard!
The Magic Historian.
My bones hurt. Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, we are here to talk about today's ban announcement of this fellow right here, Hullbreacher. Now, this is a pretty recent addition to Commander, right? This came from Commander Legends. This card was specifically designed by Wizards of the Coast for Commander, but unfortunately they overshot the mark and the card has become a problem. As a result, as of today, the card is banned in Commander, and there are mixed feelings about this. There are some people who are cheering, going, "Yay! Hooray! The witch is dead!" And there are other people going, "Oh, the Rules Committee! Can't you stop meddling with my game?" And I think there's a couple of different issues to address in this regard. But first of all, let's actually break down what the card is for anybody who's not fully aware of Mr. Hullbreacher. This card is a very potent card. 1 blue and 2 for a 3/2 merfolk pirate with flash. And it says, if an opponent would draw a card, except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token. And I've always loved the flavor text and artwork combo on this card, where the flavor text says, "I don't need a map to find riches." And you can see that he's literally swum up to like a pirate ship or whatever galleon it is, climbed up the side and just went, "Wha-cha!" and like punched into the side of the ship. Understand something. Normally, when we're talking about regular everyday humans, they are in terms of magic stats like a 0-1 or a 1-1. This guy's a 3-2. That's like the power of an elephant. So he just boom punches in and takes what he wants. That is a lot of fun. And I mean, you literally can't get more direct with the name Hullbreacher. He's literally breaching the hull. So the idea behind this card was originally supposed to be a defensive capacity style card, where this is just meant to shut down your opponent drawing a bunch of cards. On the surface of it, if you look at it and go, okay, well, you know what, if my opponent's using a bunch of card draw spells, this will shut them down and I will get a bunch of treasures. So at first, you may not even really understand exactly what's going on. Like, why is Hullbreacher a huge problem for Magic, like Commander specifically, when cards like Notion Thief aren't, right? Because Notion Thief is fairly similar. It's 1 black, 1 blue, and 2 for a 3/1 with flash. And if an opponent would draw a card except the first one he or she draws in each of his or her draw steps, instead that player skips that draw and you draw a card. So you might even say to yourself, well, this guy's better. The Hullbreacher only gives you a treasure token, whereas Notion Thief literally lets you steal their draws altogether. But there is a huge difference between these cards, and that is the fact that Notion Thief costs more mana, and more specifically costs black mana, which makes it far more restrictive. When it comes to Commander, you're only able to play within your Commander's color identity. So as a result, cards like this aren't nearly as powerful. Plus, an extra turn to cast it is a huge difference. Now, I want to take a quick moment to read out the actual announcement from the Commander Rules Committee about Hullbreacher being banned. It says, Hullbreacher has been a problem card since its release. Its ostensible defensive use against extra card draw has been dwarfed by offensively combining with mass draw effects to easily strip players' hands while accelerating the controller. That play pattern isn't something we want prevalent in casual play. See the Leovold ban. And we have seen a lot of evidence that it's too tempting even there, as it combines with wheels and other popular casual staples. The case against the card was overwhelming. There remain a few similar cards that are still permitted, notably Notion Thief and Narset Parter of Veils. The additional hoops required, an additional color pip for Notion Thief, and sorcery speed for Narset appear to be keeping them to the appropriate level of play, although we'll continue to keep an eye on them. And I have to agree, Notion Thief, while being a really obnoxious steal your draw style card, didn't have nearly the impact on Commander that Hullbreacher did. But if you want to know the secret reason that they got rid of it, see how he looks all grumpy and unhappy about his stealing? Take a look at Hullbreacher. He's just too happy about his theft. Really, that's what it boils down to. If he was frowning, they would have kept the card around. Can you imagine if that was actually the case? But no, this is a situation actually kind of similar to when we talked about Oko for Standard, where a card was only looked at from one particular viewpoint, and instead of going, okay, well, from a defensive standpoint, this just shuts down card draw. But when it gets into going on the offense and messing with your opponent, it gets really gross. So there's a few obvious cards that you can combine with Hullbreacher to get into insane territory. A great example of that is Wheel of Fortune, right? Wheel of Fortune is 1 red and 2 for a sorcery. This is the old school version. I love using original versions of card art where possible. The newer version of it says all players, right? So all players must discard their hand and draw 7 new cards. Now, it becomes readily apparent with Hullbreacher that's absolutely bonkers, right? You look at it and go, okay, wait a minute, hold on. We're normally both supposed to draw 7 cards off this. We'll both discard our hands. We'll both draw 7 cards. But with a Hullbreacher out, instead, Wheel of Fortune says, all of your opponents discard their hands. You draw 7 cards and create a number of treasure tokens equal to 7 times the number of opponents that you have. So if you're playing in a 4-player game of Commander and you have out Hullbreacher and you cast Wheel of Fortune, all of your opponents discard their hands, you draw 7 cards, your opponents draw nothing, and you create 21 treasure tokens that you can then use to cast all the crazy spells in your hand, right? So that is obviously absolutely nuts. I mean, yes, you do have to be playing blue-red, but it doesn't stop there. There's another really obvious choice to combine with Hullbreacher for ongoing massive problems, and that is Teferi's Puzzle Box. If you'll notice, this is an artifact, so it doesn't even care about the color identity of your deck. It doesn't matter. You can play this in mono blue, you can play this in any combination using blue with Hullbreacher, it doesn't matter. All the options of the rainbow are available to you. Mono blue and every blue color combination are all good to go, right? So Teferi's Puzzle Box is a 4 casting cost artifact that says during each player's draw phase, that player counts the cards in his or her hand, puts those cards on the bottom of his or her library, and then draws that number of cards. So essentially, this is going to deplete your opponent's hand every turn, and you're going to get treasure tokens. Well, I guess after the initial blast of Teferi's Puzzle Box, unless they somehow manage to have a way to put cards directly into their hand that isn't card draw. This is just a crazy setup. With this and Hullbreacher, you really hobble your opponent to an insane degree, right? When we look at all this, it's not nearly the same situation as it is with Notion Thief, because Notion Thief requires that your commander be both black and blue bare minimum. And if you want to use something like Wheel of Fortune, now all of a sudden you have to be going into 3 colors. Plus, you have to have more mana to cast the Notion Thief, and in the most technical sense, he also has 1 less toughness, which makes him easier to deal with. Maybe that's why he's got that little fate, me, I'm stealing your stuff. Anyhow, there is clearly a big outcry about this. There are a number of people who are breathing a sigh of relief. And I completely understand that, because honestly, it feels very oppressive. It's not fun to lose your hand, have your opponent go off with a crazy amount of stuff, and you can't do anything. That's essentially game ending, right? Or if it's not, it hobbles the game to the point where, why would you even want to continue? Are you having fun, right? Fun is a big thing for Commander, and I think this is really the crux of why you have a group of people who are very satisfied and a group of people who are very frustrated. And they fall into different camps. Actually, it's not really that simple of just 2 categories. I'm really breaking it down into people who believe that Hullbreacher should be gone because it's unfair. And there are people who believe Hullbreacher should be around because they specifically like that card and want to use it. But there's also other people who believe that everything should be legal in Commander, and there should be no restrictions whatsoever. And I mean, I can understand the different mentalities. From some people's perspectives, it's totally a matter of look, we already have rule 0. Why don't we all discuss what we think is fun and what we don't think is fun, and then we can just build off of that. But there is the problem that you run into where certain people are just going to be drawn to decks that are inherently unfun to play against. There are people who genuinely believe that the only thing that matters when they're playing a game of Magic is their enjoyment. They're looking out for themselves, and they don't care whether their opponent is having any kind of fun whatsoever. Now, that is a more competitive EDH style mentality, and I understand that. If it's something that appeals to you, it's like, no, I want to beat you. I don't care if you're having fun. I understand that. I think one of the biggest problems, really overall, is that Commander and competitive Commander both draw from the same banned list, right? So as a result, you have people who want to play these explosive, insane decks, and they're really frustrated because they're being hobbled. They're not allowed to play those decks. But on the other hand, you have people who just want to play casually, and they have friends out there who are like, well, if it's allowable in Commander, like, it's within the rules, so I get to play it. And no, like, it just ends up in arguments where you're telling your friend, no, look, you can't play this card, you can't play this deck, but no, but it's legal in Commander, so I should be able to play anything. If you're not going to let me play by the rules, if you're not going to let me use my Hullbreacher, why am I even going to play with you? And it just turns into, like, sour grapes, bad feels. So maybe the solution, honestly, is to divide the two. Maybe competitive Commander needs its own category of banned and not banned. So all these people, because I will admit, I understand the appeal of just doing absolutely broken nonsense where you just leave your opponent completely defenseless, and you're so overpowered that you're basically the fist of doom just coming down from the heavens to smash them into nothing. Like, I get the fun of that, but it is kind of fundamentally different than the idea behind Commander. Commander, at least to me, is supposed to be a more casual, laid back, have fun kind of environment. But there are some people who genuinely can't help themselves and will always be drawn to these insane bonkers, like, once I get these 2 cards out, I auto win and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So to me, the Hullbreacher wheel setup is pretty much that. It's I do this and the game is over. Now, I don't know exactly what the breakdown of, like, super competitive to super casual is, but I have a feeling there's a lot more casual players playing Commander overall than there are super competitive ones, and that this ban is mostly going to be rejoiced. Because honestly, the problem with Hullbreacher isn't that, like, they're trying to come up with defensive cards to try and protect you, right? Because that makes sense. You want to have answers. If your opponent's just drawing crazy amounts of cards, you want to be able to shut that down. But this card does too much in terms of shutting it down, but also giving you a significant advantage, which is funny because when you read it at first and you just think, okay, they lose a card, I get a treasure token. Really, what's the big deal? But all of a sudden, when you switch it into, I'm the one making you draw cards, but I'm getting rid of that downside. I'm turning all these cards that are supposed to be equal and balanced where we both get the same effect. I'm removing all of the benefit for you and taking it upon myself in an additional way. So it's unsurprising to me. I honestly think that maybe Wizards of the Coast should have known better about this, but I'm not sure exactly how adept they are at designing cards for Commander, because it feels like Commander cards a lot of the time come in one of 2 different categories. Either the card is underwhelming to the point where it's only going to get played in some jank niche side decks, which totally fine to include those in Commander, because that's what we need. Like, lots of variety, lots of different crazy things to do. And then on the other hand, you have cards that are just too strong. They've been pushed too far to the point where they're enticing, but they make the games unfun and unbalanced. So it's interesting that a card that was literally created to essentially be a problem solver became a massive problem in its own right. And it's also interesting to note that the difference between a broken card that causes you a problem and a card that isn't that much of a problem can be as simple as the difference in the cost by 1 mana, and obviously adding in a different color as well, right? But literally, all you do is slap a black mana symbol onto Hullbreacher, and it's no longer at the level where it's untenable to deal with. I think part of the problem with Hullbreacher is the fact that it comes out so rapidly. It's got flash, and it only costs 3, which means that instead of being able to start to build out their board at the beginning of the game, your opponents, if you're playing the Hullbreacher combination, they have to be prepared to answer it immediately, because if you can't answer it immediately, all your answers are gone. If somebody flashes out a Hullbreacher at the end of your turn, like right before their turn, starts their turn, and then plays the wheel, you've just lost your hand. You haven't replaced your hand. And they have a bunch more mana to go off, and you have no answers. There's nothing you can do, right? Like, so the narrow window within which you can answer it, I think, is the biggest sin that the Hullbreacher has committed against Commander. Now, I will fully admit that I'm a noob when it comes to Commander. I am not super adept at Commander. I don't have a ton of experience, so this is the perspective of a Commander noob. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If there's anything I missed about the Hullbreacher and why he's got that big old grin on his face, I guess he should be mooping now because he's banned, but whatever, he's still going to show up in the really old school non-Commander formats because it's still a pretty strong card to be using. Anyhow, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting my channel. See you guys for the next video.